What the great Bob Marley once said, that none but ourselves can free our minds, holds equally true for diversity. We spend way too much time on the interface between citizen and government, and not enough time in the much more valuable interface of citizen to citizen. Diversity works best as a peer-to-peer process, which is just a fancy way of saying, if you want justice, you and I need to roll up our sleeves and get to work on this. When it comes to diversity, so often I hear people say, the government really needs to do more for diversity. It's not my responsibility, people say. I didn't create the problem, why should I be the one to fix it? Well, between you and me, trusting the government to solve complex social problems is a bit like trusting an Amish electrician to wire my house. I suppose it's possible, but there are probably other options to consider first. Everyone is frustrated. Lots of people are angry. Just look at all the protests that have happened in the past 2 years. Not just in places like Ferguson, but all over the country, including right here in Berkeley. Wait, protests in Berkeley? I know, I was shocked too. I'm not here to analyze the effectiveness of those protests, but I do want to remind everyone of what the main demand was behind those protests. And protest after protest, demonstration after demonstration, we heard the consistent call for a dialogue about race in America. The dialogue really needs to be a larger, more inclusive dialogue about identity in America, which would include issues like race too. In other words, the dialogue we need to have is really about diversity. But my real question is this: why are we waiting for that dialogue? Why are we expecting someone else to start it? You and I can start it right here, right now, or wherever you are, whenever you're there. Think about it. Suppose you are one of those people who think that other people don't get it. Well, if they don't get it, wouldn't it be better if they did get it? We've got two choices here. One, complain to people who do get it about the other people who don't get it, or talk to the people who don't get it and talk with them until they do get it. Anyone can complain about the problems we have. There's no revolution in that. What takes courage is to fix those problems. Nothing is easier than to sit in our own separate groups, surrounded by our people, and complain about those other groups. The other people who just don't get it. We've been doing that for years. And you know what? It's useless. It does nothing for no one. That might be a double negative, but I'm using it just to prove my point. It's like all of our different identity groups in America live on separate islands in the middle of the ocean. All we do is stay in the comfort of our own island, surrounded by our own people, telling ourselves that we have the most beautiful island of all the islands, and complaining about all the other groups who refuse to acknowledge how beautiful our island is. But what do you think the other groups on those other islands are doing? They're complaining about you. Why aren't you acknowledging how beautiful their island is? And perhaps you're thinking, what about building some bridges between the islands? Great idea. The problem is that everyone on these separate islands is waiting for someone else to start building those bridges. And as long as we wait for someone else to build the bridges, no one will actually do it. And yet we all just sit there and complain about the lack of bridges. None but ourselves can build those bridges, and more importantly, once we build them, we have to use them. Get off your island and welcome other people to yours. Just sitting on an island? Useless. Walking across that bridge? Revolutionary. At this point you might be thinking, we don't need those bridges. I like my little island, my own little group. And besides, you say, I'm a tolerant person. I tolerate all the other groups on their other little islands. Let's just peacefully and tolerantly coexist. If that's the case, then the next video is for you, because the next video explains why tolerant people are the last thing we need to make diversity work.